wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name, because if the blog version of Couch Potatoes Unite was the Enterprise NCC 1701, the podcast of Couch Potatoes Unite is clearly the Enterprise NCC 1701D. Unfortunately, our upgrade didn't come with holodecks, but hey, we're on a budget. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like, for at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and now on Amazon Music to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Gotham, the Marvel shows on Netflix, Stranger Things, iZombie, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, The Good Place, The Crown, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, and Mr. Robot. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Freaks and Geeks, the original and animated series of Star Trek, Reign, and Friends. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Westworld, Fuller House, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, How to Get Away with Murder, Will and Grace, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The 100. We'll be launching new panels covering Outlander, the Breaking Bad universe, This Is Us, The Orville, Big Little Lies, The Good Doctor, Call the Midwife, and The Animaniacs. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll revisit one of the all-time and most watched classic sitcoms, MASH. We'll consider the moral implications and quick cancellation of Dollhouse. We'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll become embroiled in all of the crazy plot twists of Revenge. We'll thank the Golden Girls for being friends, and we'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these semi-quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, or Twitter at CPU Podcast, or Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to our website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon. Man, we really are cooking. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, as long as you're using your positronic processing system to provide calculated, constructive feedback. We promise to not activate our emotion chips when receiving it, or deactivate you. Today's panel and I are continuing the biggest Looking Back series we've ever launched by request of one of our panel members, our second most involved panelist, Baya Hare, who made such an impassioned speech about this series at one of our live Comic-Con events. We were moved to embark upon this now continuing mission of galactic proportions. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, and to consider whether or not they age gracefully, like an android obsessed with the human condition, or don't hold up as well, like an omnipotent alien being obsessed with testing the human condition. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes, wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation, for some time. And this is but one chapter in a 30-episode or more, probably more, series in which we will explore each individual season of a science fiction universe that comes back without never completely going away in cycles that have recurred for more than 50 years. Today we offer you episode 7 of this mega series, which will cover the entire Star Trek franchise. In today's 7th episode, we'll be discussing the 3rd season of The Next Generation. Each new episode in this new CPU podcast franchise will progress through subsequent seasons of all the Star Trek TV series with additional coverage of the films. Furthermore, our panel will be rotating moderation duties. However, your friendly neighborhood Chief Couch Potato and Captain of the Starship CPU is not yet ready to give away the helm just yet. I am moderating today's discussion and the entire run of The Next Generation because this is my favorite chapter, and this is Chief Couch Potato Privilege TM. It's what it looks like, okay? Also, at various points in this mega series, we'll present top 10 best and bottom 10 worst episode lists around various themes chosen by the moderator in question, as we tend to do with our retrospective series. We can't get started without reviewing the plot summary, though, so to remind you, gentle listener, Star Trek The Next Generation, or TNG, is an American science fiction television series created by Gene Roddenberry. It originally aired from September 28, 1987 to May 23, 1994 in syndication, spanning 178 episodes over the course of 7 seasons. Season 3 aired from September 25, 1989 to June 18, 1990, with a total of 26 episodes. The 3rd series in the Star Trek franchise, it is the 2nd sequel to Star Trek the original series. Set in the 24th century, when Earth is part of the United Federation of Planets, it follows the adventures of a Starfleet starship, the USS Enterprise D, and its exploration of the Milky Way galaxy. The Next Generation features a new crew, starring Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Jonathan Frakes as Commander William Riker, Brent Spiner as Lieutenant Commander Data, Michael Dorn as Lieutenant Worf, LeVar Burton as Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge, Marina Sirtis as Counselor Deanna Troi, Gates McFadden as Dr. Beverly Crusher, and a new Enterprise. The series was broadcast in first-run syndication with dates and times varying among individual television stations. Today, in Part 7 of our many multi-part Star Trek series, our modestly sized crew of Enterprise faithful and Trekkers extraordinaire, namely Nick, Sarah, Kyle, and Michael, along with your very involved moderator, will talk about the finer and less fine points of Season 3 of The Next Generation. It should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire Next Gen series and may discuss sensitive plot points, so for those of you who have not watched Star Trek The Next Generation, first of all, we'd be happy to beam you aboard, and second, if you plan to do so, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel! How are you?
Great!
Okay! So it's a little different aboard the Starship CPU since our last episode. When we recorded the Season 2 talk, there was not the declaration, well, there might have been the declaration of a pandemic, but it had not reached the United States at that point. We are about 6 months out from that recording, and as you all know, the pandemic has descended upon the world, and so we are recording this one virtually, which makes me a little sad. We've been doing all of our episodes virtually, but this is a very passionate and spicy panel that has a lot of Star Trek, love and critical analysis and general comedy and stuff. So we're doing it virtually, so you might hear that. But anyway, we're still doing it the same way. It's one of our retrospective series. Instead of doing the character question each and every time we do each season of a series, we just review how we chose in the first chapter of the series in question, which this time is The Next Generation. So what I'd like the panel to do is remind the listener who you are and which character you chose. Who'd like to start?
I'm Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hi. I chose Picard.
You did. Why did you choose Picard?
I really like this show. I like this chunk of Star Trek, starting with Next Gen a lot. I love the characters and even the cheesy, not great episodes. I still don't skip upon rewatch.
And you love Dr. Beverly Crusher.
One of my favorite characters in the Star Trek universe.
All right. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks.
I'll go.
Okay. Hi.
I'm Sarah, and Nick is married to me.
Hi, Sarah, and Nick is married to you.
We're not in the same room, which is weird, because we're in the same house. So, ooh.
Well, it's good that you're at least starting in the same house.
Same house. I picked Will Riker. I don't recall specifically why, but probably because my favorite. Is he my favorite? I don't remember why I picked him.
I don't remember what you said in the season 1 episode, but in the season 2 episode, you said you had to reserve your top level excitement for another series further down the line. To which
true.
Nick said, okay.
That's true. That's probably true.
So, welcome back, Sarah.
Good to be here.
Good to have you here.
I'm Kyle,
Hi, Kyle.
moderator's brother-in-law. My wife, who usually does podcasts with me, isn't here. The only nerdy podcast that she isn't part of. And I believe you said I picked Jordy,
Yes.
which I don't remember why. I mean, maybe it's because I like to read a lot.
I believe... I don't know what that expression is. I believe what you said was because you're an original series purist, you couldn't necessarily pick Picard. However, you do like the characters, which was part of Geordie's description, and Geordie is like your favorite character or one of them.
Surprised I didn't find a way to wiggle Data since he's really the top in this series.
Well, we'll have to go back and look and see if you change your mind then. But I'm very proud of you that you remembered the disclaimer because you didn't the last time. And it was a whole thing. Okay, welcome back, Kyle. It's like we're family.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Michael.
Hi, Michael.
So I love this show as one of my favorite Star Trek shows. So I chose Picard, and I had a little bit of Troy in there because I think, if I remember correctly, I was drawn to the relationships on the show.
Part of her description was some of the problematic contexts for female characters, especially.
Oh, that was it. Okay, yes. Mhm. Yes, okay. So, and because I do agree with that, because there's one particular episode in particular that really kind of, the season does sort of embody that, in my opinion.
Okay. It could also be because you like chocolate, which was suggested offline by co-panelist Nick. Do you enjoy chocolate?
You know, I actually, when I was a kid, I actually hated chocolate. I was notorious in my family for hating it. I grew to love it when I was older, but I'm not like a huge chocolate like fiend. I'm more of a vanilla type person, which is weird.
We'll leave that there. Welcome back, Michael. And of course, my name is Kylie. As I've mentioned, I am moderating this chapter of Star Trek because I chose Picard because this is my favorite chapter of Star Trek. Star Trek The Next Generation. I love this series particularly, which isn't to say that I don't love other series. I just love this series the most. Welcome back, panel. And so, if you've been listening to our Star Trek series thus far, you know what we do is we're breaking out each discussion per season. We'll spend a little time talking generally about the season, what we liked, what we didn't like, and then of course we've picked episodes that we would consider to be our personal best out of the season and episodes that we would consider to be our personal worst out of the season, which may or may not inform our top 10 lists later on when we're finished discussing The Next Generation fully. But we're talking about season 3, which I would say is the beginning of the golden age of this series. Or maybe it's somebody gave me, I didn't want to feed the discussion. The moral of it is, talk generally about season 3, Star Trek The Next Generation. What did you like? What didn't you like? What is your general commentary about season 3? Okay, don't all jump in at one. Okay, it's real good. We're going to need a little more than that, Lieutenant Nick.
I don't want to start with this, but we get Beverly Crusher back, and that helps. However you feel about Pulaski and versus Crusher, because it is Crusher the rest of the time, that helps. It kind of starts to signify the kind of settling into the series, at least part of that. Some of the episodes in this season are some of the best ones in the show, or at least encapsulate the feeling of the series as a whole.
And definitely with this season, like in the first 2 seasons, it's very easy to pick worst episodes. I feel like once you hit the 3rd season onto the rest of the series, there are some episodes that are just okay, but there are far worse, terrible episodes. Like the writers are definitely finding what works and playing out. Even with ones with weird plots or bad plots, there are great moments and great character moments. So like it really hits the ground running this season.
Also, we get Reginald Barclay this season. Ooh.
I like his character, and I've always have, and I feel like I have, especially in my younger days, I feel like I related to him a lot on the show, and I believe I started watching around this time when Barkley was introduced. So it came when he was introduced around this time, I seemed to I feel like he was kind of an entry point for me in a weird way. Like I was familiar with Star Trek, but being, 8, 9 years old at the time that I'm watching this, I had sort of a entry point by watching this character. It's like, oh, hey, that character's kind of like me.
Barkley, growing up, was always a character that I just enjoyed. He brought some sort of comedy to it. His episodes have a really easy entry point for like technobabble. They're like sci-fi heavy because he has to like figure it out. But as I got older, it is like some people complain, like, how did this guy get through Starfleet? And I feel like this is the future where those emotional anxiety issues, there's a counselor on the ship to help. So he's got through Starfleet because he has something to offer, and that he's awkward and has some neuroses, borderline psychoses. It's something he can still work on and be a fully functional member of this society. And he's goofy, so he's fun.
And he appears later in Voyager. So
Got some important stuff in Voyager that he does.
yeah. We also get Kern, right? This is his first time. Tony
Yes.
Todd.
Kern, Worf's brother, yes.
Who I'm sure some of our horror movie fans know from
Yes.
Candyman.
I actually met Tony Todd, and he's obsessed with Star Trek, all the series, not just the one he was in. So like he's always talking about how he hopes they cast him as another character with different makeup. And I love that episode because it kind of, throughout all the rest of the seasons, Worf kind of has his own Klingon subplot. And if you take all those episodes away from everything else and put them together, it makes like one story that you don't need to watch any of the rest. And I love the way they did that, and it works really well. Plus, I just love Klingons.
So season 3 is a great season, especially by the end. It's firing on all cylinders. I did make a note to myself when I was rewatching it that it does kind of start off a little slower again. I mean, I don't know if it hits the ground running as much as it revs a little bit before it then hits the ground running, just because with Crusher's return, which I'm very happy to see her back, I think there's a reason why she was cast originally, and she meshes well with the other 6 or 7 people. And Wesley's presence on the ship feels a little bit more comfortable again when Mom's back in the picture. But it takes a minute again for them to at least find that groove, and for the writers to find the groove. But then I actually made a note that halfway through, right about the time Yesterday's Enterprise is the episode, I think that it really just, it changes, and every episode pretty much from there is fire from that moment until probably through to the later seasons. I mean, there are some clunkers, there are some that are maybe not as good, but the clunkers in this season and in every subsequent season do not equal the clunkerness of any of the first 2 seasons that we've been talking about. So I think this is just a really, really exciting season. I love Sins of the Father, foreshadow, that is going to feature on my top 3. It is one of the best, even if you took it away from the arc of Worf, it's one of the best singular episodes of the entire series. It gives me chills every time to watch it. Plus, there's just so much more layer and depth to not only Worf as a character, but the Klingon culture once again. You get to go to the home world. It's fun.
I will definitely agree with you on your assessment that the first half of the season is kind of, it's for me, it's a lot unmemorable.
Yeah.
And it's just until, I don't know what it is about Yesterday's Enterprise. I feel like there have been think pieces about how that episode basically saved the show. And without that episode, the show probably would have been canceled. And it just really does. There is that kind of weird turn where it just suddenly becomes like this important thing to watch.
And we mentioned Barkley. I like Barkley, but I don't like all of his episodes. But some of the episodes in this season are okay. I don't know. He is very goofy. Sometimes his goofiness is too much comic relief for the position of the episode and the order that it's made. But I don't, I enjoy him. He's pleasant. He's pleasantly awkward, and I wish him well.
One of the things I like about Barkley, and I get that the Enterprise D is a lot bigger, but I like the feeling of seeing recurring characters around instead of it just keeps rotating because it's just extras. Whereas in Deep Space Nine and Voyager, they had to pay attention to that. Even though the space station was coming and going, there are people who did live there and they weren't transferring. And Voyager, obviously, they were locked in. So it's not like Barkley. It's nice that he's around. I probably would have liked it even more if he had more episodes that weren't Barkley episodes. They're episodes that he's there in engineering.
I like that he was problematic. I mean, he wasn't really a good employee. He wasn't reliable because he had his own demons. And I think, that actor, why can I not think of it? Is it Dwight?
Dwight Schultz, I think.
Was so famous from the A-Team. Like a lot of people watched that and knew him. And so it was kind of like a big deal, I think, that he was on. And I think it just kind of gave us, because all we ever see, it seems like all we ever see are these like really awesome employees who like are so smart and they're using their brains and they're all working together and they're brave. And it's like, then there's this guy who's neurotic and needs a lot of encouragement. I mean, he's smart, but he needs a lot of help. And I think it's kind of a good picture of the fact that their world still had humanity and it had a lot of different kinds of people, not just the best of the best. I don't know. That's what I like.
He is what they started and didn't finish with season 2 character, Selena Gomez. She was like nervous around the captain. She spilled coffee on him. Was that the wrong name?
Well,
Yeah.
Selena Gomez is like
Yeah, she's an actress who played Milbratz. What's her name? I don't know.
I think it's Lieutenant Gomez, possibly.
Well, whatever. It was a character who ended up only being in 2 episodes. Later, behind the scenes, that character was supposed to be a love interest for Geordi as well, and she was just nervous and a little bumbling, kind of like a precursor to Barkley. Not that Barkley was supposed to be a love interest for Geordi, but you get what I'm saying.
Well, I was just going to say there are other recurring characters, like there's the nurse, the nurse that comes back. Ogawa, yes. And then there's Keiko with Miles, and, there are other ones too, so but I take Sarah's point. I like the fact that not everybody walks into a starship situation and actually maintains composure in their particular position.
And I just found out that Keiko, when they originally created that character, she was supposed to be the recurring helmsman because I don't know if it was to replace Wesley or obviously Geordi and Worf both were up there. And then after season 2, they were promoted. So they wanted, instead of having that rotating one, kind of what Ro becomes eventually. I forget what season we get Ro, but that's what Keiko was supposed to be. And then I still don't quite understand. Keiko's not a part of Starfleet. She was just there before she met Chief O'Brien.
She administers the Arboretum, Nick.
I know, but I don't understand how that works on the starship.
The chain of command.
How is Guinan in charge of 10 Forward? She's a civilian that was given a job. That's how it works.
I guess that is how it works. I'd like them to explore that more, I guess.
Well, you're going to have to go back 30 years. But we can dream. Maybe on Star Trek Picard, they'll give us a throwaway shade from 30 years ago that says this is how civilians got jobs on starships.
Honestly, it'll probably be on the animated series Lower Decks. I could see it being on there.
Nick and I are watching that.
That's good, because it will be part of this series as part of our 30-plus mega Star Trek analysis. What else did you like or not like about Season 3?
There's so much. It's hard to not just go into our favorites, so...
They got new uniforms.
They did.
That was Patrick Stewart. The producers asked him what he wanted for Season 3. He said he wanted new uniforms, and he wanted them to fire Diana Muldaur and bring back Beverly Gates McDaniel. He got everything he wanted.
He sure did.
And they still weren't sure. His contract was up at the end of the season. One of the reasons. Yep, that's why we get the cliffhanger we do, because we might have been saying goodbye to Picard and hello to Shelby, I think.
Well, I'm really glad they didn't go that way.
I do not like her. Ugh.
Ouch.
Era, geez.
No, I don't like her either.
She's a way better character. I know I shouldn't bring this up, but she's a way better character in the Peter David book series that was a spin-off of this show called, not Final Frontier, shoot, what was the name of it? Oh man, I should have probably done research. But anyway, there's a whole book series by author Peter David that includes like a bunch of disparate like side characters from the Next Generation universe all serving on the same starship. And Shelby is one of them, and she gets way more well-rounded in that book. Anyway.
And I hate to talk about like we did when we did cover season 2, but I don't think they write her to be likable, so I don't like her. It's kind of like Pulaski. I'm not supposed to like her. I'm gonna feed right into that, and I did not like her. And her hair didn't help me.
Back to the hair. Shelby's hair didn't do it for you either?
Did not do it for me, no.
Again, it was 1990.
It's like 23:42 or something, right?
Okay, you don't know. We had the same discussion about Pulaski. You don't know what's happening 300 years from now.
That's true. But again, I don't know how come Beverly manages to look semi-normal and the rest of them are like crazy hair. I don't know. That doesn't make me not like her, but it just doesn't help me to like her. Keiko's got normal hair. I mean, come on.
I think for the amount of time she appears on this series, she's not given enough depth to be likable or not likable. She's thrust into a situation which unfortunately involves a lot of Borg. So there's really not a lot of time to like get to know her.
No, I don't like her interactions with Will Riker. She's very like baldly ambitious, and
well, that's true. She'd clearly be a Slytherin by most assessments.
Yeah, and I guess in a way I'm supposed to respect that she's a woman who says what she wants, but I don't care for the way she executes it. So
Riker felt the same way.
The whole point I think about that character was, I don't know if they did intend to make her the new lead of the show. Picard's name, Patrick Stewart. If she was intended to be the lead of the series after Patrick Stewart left, I don't know. But I think the point of her character in that episode is literally just to be an antagonist to Riker, who's now in charge of the ship because he's gone. They needed that conflict of, it's a new character, it's a new dynamic, and Riker's obviously mourning the loss, but he can't really mourn the loss because he's on duty and he has to actually try and save the Federation, basically. So, it's that sort of prickly dynamic that I think was meant to underscore maybe some of his feelings for the loss of his captain. He never wanted to,
kind of flips the coin on kind of like what you see Riker in the early seasons where he's like gung-ho to be captain, and you kind of see that like a couple of years with Picard and learning from Picard, he realizes where he knows where he works best and who he works best with, and he's just not that blind ambition anymore, and it makes Riker a lot more likable.
He gets to work with a robot.
What?
I don't know. Why would you leave the Enterprise? Data's going to save your lives every single time.
I think there are some people that recognize that they are very good in higher leadership things, but they don't want the ultimate job. I think I'm one of those people. I work at a school and I support the principal, but I don't want that job. I'm not taking that bullet. I just feel like there are some people that know that what they're good at and they want to do what they're good at, and he realizes like that is his niche. I mean, granted, later he does go on to captain other ships. We know that from other series and movies and etc. But he's still young, so
they explore, much like the movie's exploration of Kirk realizing that captain is better than admiral. Riker, while he wants to be captain, realizes that first officer on the Enterprise is better than captain anywhere else.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And the admirals are
terrible.
There's a couple that pop in that are nice and good, but some
not very often though, compared to the bad point. I mean, there are a lot of bad admirals in this series.
This season.
Yeah, well, in this series, but I'm thinking of there's a really great one in Discovery, so everybody watch that.
I mean, look at them in the movies. I mean, you have like Undiscovered Country where there's a couple who are plotting the murder of the Klingon people.
Yeah, they do get really corrupt. What's going on there? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned Discovery. I know we shouldn't talk about it, but apparently there is some talk about what happens to the Federation in the third season of that show.
And in the first season of Star Trek Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's clearly a conversation we can have as we progress through the individual series. But when it comes to Riker, I mean, I think you said it exactly right, Nick. I never disbelieved the idea that he was making a mistake by choosing to stay on the Enterprise, and I think they really play with that scenario, since we've already jumped to the best of both worlds once and the best of both worlds with that whole setup. And whether or not Patrick Stewart had chosen to come back, I think it would have been, if he had chosen not to come back and he'd actually been absorbed into the collective or whatever might have happened, it still would have been an interesting story device, because Riker would have achieved that which he'd already been offered many times, only aboard the ship that he chose to stay and remain on. I think that would have been an interesting story too, and I'm very thankful that Sir Patrick Stewart stayed right where he was, because I love him and I love Jean-Luc Picard, and I think there were so many good episodes that we got from that choice. But, you know, I think the best of both worlds really does a good job of exploring, actually setting up and making that decision convincing from Riker's point of view.
I truly don't know what would have happened to the entire franchise if Patrick Stewart left after
I know,
season
no
two.
First Contact.
Gosh, that's the best one.
Agreed.
But like we were saying, they're finding their footing, and it's really starting to take off in season 3. It'd be right back at shaky ground in season 4 then, with a new captain, even if it's a character we know, new relationships. I don't know if you get to Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and even like, oh, do we make this show into movie? I just don't know what happens with that in that alternate timeline. So I'm very grateful he stayed.
We'll just have to take a transporter to another timeline to get that, to find out how that works.
Is there anything about this season that you, other than Shelby, I guess, that you didn't like? Because I know we're kind of talking around some of the really... I know we're talking a lot about positive attributes of the third season. I don't know if there are any negative attributes, or if there's anything positive that you might want to make sure we cover generally before we start drilling down. I can say that when it comes to choosing best episodes, the 3 that I chose were pretty easy for me to pick, but then I felt like I was losing children with all the ones that I didn't pick, because there's quite a few honorable mentions in there that I'm like, oh, but this is such a good episode, but is it really better than any of these 3? No. But they're still very, very, very good, and I'm going to honorably mention them.
I have 8 favorites. I mean, I'm not going to mention all of them, but like when I list the ones that I like and don't like, I have 8 on my like list and only 3 on my dislike list.
Yeah, me too.
And then I could probably be persuaded either way. You guys know I get real wishy-washy, but sometimes I need to re-talk about them with you guys before I really remember certain things. But this one has so many good ones. I mean, so many on this list are going to make my ultimate list. I think at least 2 of them will.
I don't know if this is a nitpick about if we're going to talk about negatives of this season, but as I was rewatching like the early episodes of the season, the first half, I don't know what this phenomenon is, but I feel like in the 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s, there was this stilted television acting that you get on these type of sci-fi type shows, and even like just like lower budgeted television shows from this era where those side characters are just very wooden, stilted actors. I don't know, I guess you could call it the central casting phenomenon or something. I don't know. But like, those very early episodes, you would get like a side character in the episode and they would just be like, oh, I'm going to talk like this the whole time, and I'm not really going to put a lot of emotion into what... I don't know, it was just so weird, and it was only distracting at first. Once I got over it, it was just laughable somewhat.
I mean, you also have to remember, in this, up until like the mid to late 90s, TV was always kind of looked down upon as like all the best actors are going Broadway or Hollywood. It wasn't until more modern times you see more movie actors going into television series. So the pool of actors wasn't quite as great.
That is true, yeah. I guess it's the contrast between the characters we know and love and being like, oh, you're doing a really good job there. And I love the way you play that little subtle aspect of your character. But then you have these little side characters. As an example, the episode of The Ensigns of Command, which is the second episode of the season, I swear to God, the Goshevin character was dubbed. He was dubbed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there you go. I mean, it just sounded like he was being dubbed, and it didn't sound like it was, and it sounded like the dubbing was terrible.
Why was he dubbed, Nick? Do you know why?
The public records at Paramount state that the actor was unhappy with his performance and didn't even want it to air. Paramount agreed to at least remove his name from the credits and overdub it. And some people think that it wasn't that, and that there was some sort of incident that they didn't want. I'm getting some of this from IMDb and some of it from other podcasts I listen to, but he was not happy with his performance. But it is, I mean, you could tell they're dubbing, but I feel like it fits in with this episode because the alien species is the Shellyak, which is basically a blanket with some silver diamonds on it.
What was the Ensigns of Command about again?
It's the episode where there's a colony on a planet belonging to a somewhat not really a hostile alien race, but they just don't want to be a part of the Federation, but they own a section of space, and they want to depopulate the humans from the planet, so the Enterprise has to do it, but they can't because it's a larger colony than they realize. And so Data, being the only one that can withstand the radiation on the planet, is the one in charge of convincing everyone to get off the planet, which I like that aspect. It's kind of a weird, for me, that episode's very uneven because I like the stuff that the main characters are doing, but I hate what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Feels like a real good season 2 episode.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love the moment where Picard...
I was going to say, the thing about that episode, though, is most of it's just okay, but the ending with Data, with the music, which is a reoccurring theme, all the way up till the new show, Picard, it's its own little minor sub-part of character of Data's growth. And this is the first time, like, Picard is seeing that he's being creative and that he has emotions, he just doesn't know it.
It's a good... And Data solves the problem, I think, well. He destroys their water source, and then they have to leave because they would have died, and they didn't understand the situation that they were in because they were so separate from the space part of it. Like, this is their land, they'll deal with whatever happens, not realizing what the Shellyak would do.
Yeah, this is a middle of the road episode for me. I don't recall the ham and cheese of the actors that you're talking about, but at the same time, it wasn't the best episode, and because Data was a forefront character, I probably thought of it a little bit more highly than I normally would have, just because of the moments Kyle also talked about, you know, with the music playing and the conversations he has about learning his piece and things. So, I don't know, I like those aspects of that and probably reflect on that more. Anything else you want to generally say before we start drilling down into our list? Now, I don't want you to feel restricted to 3 if we do the lists. I know I'm not going to. I'm going to mention all my honorable mentions.
I mean, I'll mention them if nobody else brings them up, but I think that we're going to, well, maybe we'll agree. I don't know. There's so many good ones.
There are.
I think it'll be hard for us to miss some of these. Somebody's going to mention some of them.
My guess is that out of the 5 of us, our top 3 will probably encompass 4 or 5 different episodes.
Probably.
It's a safe bet. Listener, if you're taking bets, get out your score sheets, get out your little pencils like you get on the mini golf course. Let's see how we tally. I think this is a natural segue for lists. There isn't a lot general to say, I guess, about season 3. I think we all agree that the show's getting really good, and so... what do? Let's start with the worst episodes. I feel like these might be all over the place just because are there really clear worst episodes? I don't know. I guess we'll find that out. Who wants to start with their worst list?
I can start because it's a natural segue, and this was tough for me because the bad ones weren't that bad. So, like you just said, it was middle of the ground for you, Kylie. I enjoyed the Ensigns of Command, but still put it in my bottom 3 because it was a little muted. And like Sarah, I could easily be convinced otherwise in this season for the episodes on my bottom 3. My top 3, I'm going to hold pretty strong to. Also, my next 2 on the list, I kind of go, ugh, this one for my number 2, which is Tin Man. Huh? Anyone?
No. I like Tin Man.
You do?
I do. I don't know why I like Tin Man. I almost put it on my honorable mentions. It looks like I took it off. I think I just really like the story of the alien life form that looks like a ship, and that I like that it's Harry Gruner. I think it's fun that he's on it. He's such a prolific character actor. This is early in his career, and I think it's also a fun exploration of the depths of the Betazoid culture and their innate talent. And so I always responded very well to that episode. I would put it in my top half of these episodes. I like the story a lot.
I like that episode, yeah.
Like I said, I don't hate it. There's aspects of it I love. Sometimes that I forget the character's name, but the annoyance that the characters on the ship have towards him, I also share. And that's probably because he's doing a good job. And it's good sci-fi on both the Betazoid. Which one's the planet? Which one's the people?
Beta Z is the planet. Betazoid is the race, is the name of the people.
Like humanoid is the race and human is the planet. Got it.
Right. Well, if you think about it, it comes from beta, the Greek alphabet, and Z, Beta Z.
Tam Elbrun is the name of the character.
Right. And I think we get episodes I like a little bit more that focus on, what do you call that kind of life form that lives in space? I forget. They have a word for it. An intergalactic life form? I don't know. A space fish? Boo. Even though this one looks like a pine cone.
It's also a good vehicle, again, for Marina, which she doesn't get a ton of those by herself. And even though she's somewhat ancillary to this larger-than-life character, I like the fact that she has to be the one to kind of rein him in.
Yeah, and like I said, I think Kyle's dead on that. For me, there aren't any anchors in this season. Like season 1 and 2 have ones that are clearly. So even my least favorite is still not, I don't think is terrible. So my least favorite is the vengeance factor, which is the one where...
That's my least favorite!
Yeah, Riker falls in love with that person who is not aging or whatever. She's lived a long time, looks the same. Utah, I think. I don't know. But her sole purpose is to assassinate the rest of the clan that killed out most of her clan with poison. And there's stuff about it I like, and there's stuff about it that just feels like another holdover from like season 1 that they still have this idea to put together. And it was okay. I feel like we have a character in there that reminds me of Kai Wynn from Deep Space Nine. Like,
she even looks like her.
Yeah, but it's not terrible, but it also, sometimes I'm like, why is the Federation even dealing with these species? That's like, it's the stretch.
I agree with the stretch, and I also think to Michael's earlier point about some of the ham-fisted acting of the supporting cast, that was very true in the Vengeance Factor. I felt like all the clan members were super over the top when they were having all their discussions and recounting their history of being enemies, no matter in what scene it was.
Maybe it's harder than we realize to do a sci-fi, especially at this time, because you don't really know. It's a different species. I don't know. And I feel like if you're playing Klingon, you have to be over the top with the makeup. And so I don't really blame the actors, but I agree that it didn't work a lot back then.
Well, and it didn't play well in this story.
Right.
Which was, actually, this could have been a very good allegory, and I think the seeds of it were there. It got a little bit too complicated with Riker getting too involved. Oh, Riker. Get some mustache and a beard. Things happen. So, it was just overcomplicated. It's not a bad episode. It will not feature on my bottom 10 worst of the series. Just to me, of all of the episodes in season 3, it's one of the most tedious, and so that's probably why it ranks as the worst for me.
So that's my bottom 3.
I can do mine if you want.
Okay.
I have an honorable mention that I don't like.
A dishonorable mention?
Sure. I feel like some people might like this one, but I don't like the bonding. It's the one where the lady dies, and then the aliens feel so bad that they keep making her reappear to her son and try to bring him down to the planet. And I just really find it, maybe it's because I'm a mother, I don't know, but I feel like it's like psychologically creepy to the kid, which is the point of it, but I just don't need to watch it, I guess. I don't like it.
I like the idea of it, but it definitely fits. This is a type of episode that Next Gen does.
Yeah. But my number 3 that I don't like is the Vengeance Factor. I didn't like it. I'll just echo Nick's reasons for that one.
Okay.
Number 2 that I didn't like is the price. Yeah, I'm looking up the synopsis right now. Oh, I have my
Well,
hand up.
that's the notorious episode where we have Troy and Crusher doing the space yoga thing, where it's just like obviously meant to be gratuitous, male gaze, like, oh, hey, we're going to be the 2 women on this show who are talking about the beautiful guy that Troy's all over the place with, and here they are in this weird form-fitting yoga. I don't know. That scene is notorious in, like, certain circles. And
the episode is the secret Betazoid negotiator who's trying to help people, specifically, I don't think he's helping the Ferengi, but the Ferengi are part of it. Everybody's trying to get control of a wormhole, and he hasn't disclosed that he's part Betazoid, and he's using it to his advantage, and so him and Troy get involved in a
And I don't love the
philosophical argument.
Ferengi, of course. They're not my favorite. They creep me out a bit. But that guy creeps me out so badly that I don't even like to watch this. He is creepy to the nth degree, and I don't like it. And I think he sexually manipulates her, and I don't care for that sort of nonsense. And is this the one where the wormhole is unstable and the Ferengi get caught in it and then later show up in Voyager? Is that?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Well, I'm just going to give a nod to that because I enjoy that episode later. But otherwise, I just find the sexual manipulation to be uncomfortable, and I don't care for that, I'll just say.
It's not one of my favorite because of the reasons you stated. I didn't put it on my list, though, because I like the fact that it seeds Voyager later on.
Yeah.
So it seems between the Voyager connection, which it's obviously because of the wormhole led to the Delta Quadrant. It feels like it's an episode that people must really like, because now on Discovery, there's a recurring character. I think it's their new security officer. She is Barbazon, which is the species who has the wormhole that is negotiating who gets the rights to it. And it's like, what? Okay, I guess we're going back to the species, even though Discoveries in the past from Next Gen and didn't seem like they were part of the Federation. Whatever.
Well, maybe because I think in the price in this actual episode, that part of the story is actually kind of interesting. Yeah, Ferengi are annoying, but the idea of discovering this wormhole and trying to negotiate for its economic and strategic advantage, that's some of what Star Trek does really well, is, politicking between alien worlds. The aspect that I think Sarah is responding to, which is the actual character who's the chief negotiator, who's, not a nice man, very manipulative. I think that can be forgotten because the context was pretty good, and I think the context does provide a lot of story ideas that they can mine for other things.
Yeah, that kind of leads into my least favorite, and I might get flack for this one, but I'm going to stand by what I say here. My least favorite is Menage a Troy. It's where the Ferengi, yet again, kidnap Troy, Luoxana, and Riker. I think it's just so cringy, and I hate it. I usually like Luoxana Troy's episodes, but this one is very cringy for me. It's like they're naked, and it's ugh.
I agree. It's on my bottom list.
Oh, good. I feel vindicated. But you and I, Kyle, generally don't like the Ferengi, so I feel like we match
They're
up.
so horrible to watch. It's painful for me to watch Ferengi episodes.
Man, Deep Space Nine is going to be hard for you.
I mean, it's a little different with Quark. But
they still have some rough Ferengi episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one I don't love, but it didn't make my list.
Yeah, I just don't need to watch it.
That is definitely the worst of the Luoxana Troy episodes, and she's one of my favorite side characters, so, yeah, it's disappointing heavily.
I agree with that assessment, that it's the worst of the Luoxana episodes. I think that's true.
That'd be a fun list. That and Q. That episode, Menage a Troy, has Ethan Phillips playing one of the Ferengi, who goes on to play Neelix in Voyager.
Yes.
Also, Neelix plays a Ferengi in the Voyager episode that the price is basically the first part of.
All right.
That's all I got.
Since I already said one of my worst ones, I'll go.
Okay.
And then The second one that I really don't like, and it's not really a bad episode, but I hate when popular TV shows copy whatever movie's popular at the time. So The Enemy, where Geordie LaForge is trapped on the planet
Romulan.
with the Romulan, because the summer before this season, the movie Enemy Mine came out with this exact plot. So it just felt like they were just like, oh, hey, this is popular right now in sci-fi. Let's just copy that plot exactly as a filler episode. And then later, there's an Enterprise episode that copies this episode almost exactly. So it's just overdone and it's not creative. And
Hard
then
to come up with 24 episodes.
I didn't mind it. Romulans are always fun. Come on.
And then the episode that and this is actually one of my least favorite of all time, and I think it's because of context reasons from when I was a kid, The Survivors. They would air chunks of Star Trek episodes, and they would air the original series and then a Next Gen episode. I just remember watching, I think it was Arena of the Next Gen or the original series, one of the episodes that I really loved. And then they immediately put this episode on. And I remember I was so bored as a kid by it. And I was thinking, like, I don't ever want to watch The Next Generation again. Like, this is not Kirk and them. This is boring. And I was like 5. So I built this episode up in my head. I didn't even rewatch it when I rewatched this season. I skipped over it. So I don't know if I'd be kinder in rewatching it, but in my head, my mind has built it up to be so boring that I just can't physically watch it.
It doesn't move very quickly if you're looking for a lot of action. It's on my list of good ones, but mostly because I think the acting is so fabulous. But if you're looking for like a real mover and a shaker, it's not that. There's a mystery. We kind of think we might know, and they don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a well-written episode. No, it's not one of Star Trek's faster episodes. It does move along at a slower clip, but it's that kind of slow build and tension, that idea that there's something they're not telling you, and you don't know what it is, and you might know what it is. And even when I rewatch it, now I try to space out my rewatches. I don't remember from space to space what the mystery it is that I'm actually watching until like just before it's revealed again. And I think that's a testament to it's a pretty good directed episode and a pretty well written episode. It's not in my list, but I do really like it because it's different. It's actually a little bit different than some of the other Star Trek episodes.
Yeah, I really like that episode. I enjoy the guest stars. Anne Haney is in like everything at this time. She even plays another character in Deep Space Nine. And John Anderson is, pretty classic actor from back in the day. And he talks funny. I like to listen to him say stuff like the Hooshnock. So that's good times. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right, so that leaves my bottom 3, right?
Well, before mine.
One more.
Oh, it's Kyle. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
Did you do all 3, Kyle?
That was 3, because my other one is Menage a Troy.
That's right.
The Ferengis.
Okay, then I'm not crazy. Okay, I know I'm tired, but bottom 3, most of my bottom 3's already been mentioned. I think if I had to pick my least favorite episode of the season, I'm looking at the list on, I don't know, I never really compile these like on a list, like, okay, this is definitely my list. I always tend to go for my gut. So I feel like my least favorite's probably either the bonding or the price. It's one of those two. Yeah, and we both mentioned those already. To me, the bonding just seems like it should have been more of a Klingon-centered episode, but then they're like, oh no, we're doing that later this season, so we're going to throw that out, kind of. I don't know, it just seemed really weird. Like, I feel like there should have been more of that in the episode, but it wasn't enough or something. I don't know. So, and of course, the price I just feel like Troy, who's one of my favorite characters, is severely disserviced in that episode. But one episode I kind of don't like, and I think it just fails on the way it was trying to do this storyline, and I feel like there are other episodes that do it better, is the episode titled Who Watches the Watchers?
That's on my list.
Top ones?
Bottom ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Prime Directive one.
It's the Prime Directive one. It's where they're watching the primitive quote-unquote, not really primitive, but pre-warp civilization.
That are distantly...
Proto-Vulcan.
Proto-Vulcan, yeah.
Proto-Vulcan, and it just kind of fails. It's a really ambitious concept on, like, okay, what are the ethics of the fact that the Federation is tasked with observing these pre-warp civilizations and, you know, monitoring them, and will make first contact with them when they eventually develop warp drive. You know, they monitor them so that they are able to have peaceful first contact with them. But there are other episodes in this series and other series that do this concept way better, and this one has kind of a weird, cringy Native American thing that's just like, Star Trek and Native American characters really need that. They just did not work on that very well. So yeah, that's definitely on my bottom three. I think that's my bottom three.
That's interesting that you bring that one up. I do not, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to compare it to something, but so two of mine have been mentioned. One, my best of the worst, so my third to the worst that has not been mentioned yet is The Most Toys. I went back and forth on this one. This is the one with Saul Rubinek as the guest star, and he's trying to collect data as one of his trophy pieces that he plays with like a little child in his trophy room. And it's a fun, it's basically a vehicle, I think, that was written for Saul a little bit, and no, not really.
They started filming with the actor from an episode of TOS. He was the little person from that episode we really liked.
Yes.
And he died during the filming of it, and Saul was the last minute. They had to reshoot things with when they got Saul.
Oh, well, either way, I don't think it would have been a better concept with the original guy, but that's nice to know. I just felt it was a good concept that was way lost in the cringiness of, and also I don't think it drove the point home very well. It felt a little bit too contrived, a little bit too forced, even though Data is the prime character in it and we spend a lot of time with him. It just felt, it doesn't resonate with me. It made me kind of annoyed watching it, as opposed to, I think you're supposed to revel in a little bit of the funness of the one character while simultaneously hoping that Data escapes his predicament. It doesn't land for me, and I went back and forth on what my worst episodes were, and I just had to go with that one because I didn't enjoy rewatching it. And I've seen the series multiple times. I don't think I've ever enjoyed watching that episode, quite honestly. Will it be on my worst? I don't know. I have to go back and look. My second to the worst is Who Watches the Watchers. For all the reasons, Michael did a very nice job of summarizing it. It's a Prime Directive episode that falls flat on its face. It's weird that they picked Proto-Vulcan when you know that there's Vulcans and Romulans that are post-warp. So it's like, how did these... You know, it's interesting that they're trying to kind of expand the idea that it's not just humans that have gone out into the universe. Vulcans have somehow gone out into the universe. But it is kind of a weird, not well done allegory to watching indigenous peoples. And isn't there an original series episode where they're actually indigenous people, that they're kind of doing the same thing? I mean, to me it felt very recycled at this point, and Riker and Troy were in disguise for that one, and it starts to melt down when they discover Riker, and I just don't like it very much. And then my number one worst is The Vengeance Factor, for all the reasons that Nick said and what we've already discussed. I guess Riker wasn't doing well for me this season as much, at least in these episodes. He kind of features in both of these, but that was also another kind of cringy episode where it had the seed of a good idea. It's not like the worst thing that Next Generation's ever done, but it got way too bogged down and over the top, back and forth arguing, almost like Hatfields and McCoys in space, and he happens to be in love with one of them, and who can tell which one, and I don't know. It was hard to pick the worst, but I felt pretty safe with that one being very tedious and my least favorite.
Nice for even the worst are not that bad.
Right, and this season that is true. And that's our worst episode, so now we go into the best episodes, and it's interesting, there was some overlap in the worst episodes, so I kind of feel vindicated and validated, but the best episodes are where I'm very excited to talk about it. I'm gonna go last. Who would like to go first?
I can go first again. That's fine with me. I just have to say, Who Watches the Watchers has an actor. She is also the voice of Bobby Hill on King of the Hill. And to hear Bobby Hill, but then see the person who does the voice is nothing like Bobby Hill. So should I do my start with my bottom of my 3?
Yeah, do it like Dave Letterman's top 10. Are you new here?
Yeah. This is really tough. This is for the order of these, but I landed on The Offspring as being my number 3 out of my top 3. I really, really enjoy that episode. I love how Data, the whole thing is, I was just on board for it the whole time. When Picard's like, Data, you made another android without consulting me, and I'm like on Picard's side, and then the second Data's like, do the crew members have to consult you when they reproduce? I'm like, okay, I'm on Data's side. This is one of the worst admirals that comes in pretty bad, pretty quick. They do try to redeem him at the end, where he helps try to save Lal's life, but his logic was terrible, and I don't think that was bad writing. I think that was intentional. They needed the conflict of him taking Lal away. There was a lot of great moments. Frakes directs it, and I think he does a really good job. It's a pretty emotional episode, but it's got it does have those fun moments. Riker hitting on her and finding out that it's Data's daughter. Guinan has some good moments. So it's part of that, much like this season has, or this show has the Worf storyline. It's not as fleshed out, like they're more standalone episodes, but Data has, from Measure of a Man, The Offspring, and even some of the lore Noonien Soon episodes kind of connect, and I really enjoy them. And this episode does play heavily in Picard, whether for good or for bad. We'll talk about that in, I don't know, a decade.
Be optimistic.
But this is one of my favorite episodes. I think this is a really good example of Star Trek doing Star Trek well. Because as emotional and the exploration of the human condition as it is, it's pretty good sci-fi too.
That's in my list. I'm not going to say when, but that's in my list.
And then I feel like it might be weird if the rest of you don't have the next 2 in your list, but I won't judge if you don't. I just be surprised to hear what the other ones are. Best of Both Worlds is up there, and I think the only reason I decided it wasn't number 1 is because it's a part of a cliffhanger, and I'm cutting it in half, and I need to rank it. So I really enjoy The Best of Both Worlds. We could talk about that in a little bit. But my number 1 is yesterday's Enterprise. I really enjoy that episode every time I watch it. I like seeing Yar back. I like, again, the exploration with Guinan. All the characters have some pretty good moments in it. And then, what's his name? Chris, who he plays to Steele. I like that actor from the Enterprise C.
The one that was in Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, Shooter McGavin.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Christopher McDonald.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Christopher McDonald. I really enjoy his performance because I'm used to seeing him play, especially when I first saw this. I basically only knew him as Shooter McGavin, but he usually plays jerks, like in Dirty Work, and so I really like him in this.
He's also in Grease too. I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah, I try to block out the fact that I've even seen Grease too.
Yep, same.
So, yeah, and I love seeing the Enterprise C and finding out what happened to the Enterprise C.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll go next just because I have a very similar list here. I would say my number 3 favorite episode of the season is Captain's Holiday.
I have that on my honorable mentions.
I love Vosh. I think
do
she's
too.
such a great character. I love the playfulness of her character and the way she works well with Patrick Stewart.
Their chemistry is fire.
Yeah, I actually
say.
really like their dynamic. And plus I love seeing Picard in his element, being because he's into the archaeological science-y, nerdy stuff of being like, ooh, I'm learning about this other culture, but also out of his element because he's on vacation and supposed to be having fun, which, he wants to just read his book on the beach, and, that I love that grimace on his face whenever he's, trying to have fun. So that's probably my number 3 favorite. I love, it's one of the better lighthearted episodes of the series, I think. Because it's, again, it was this era. There always had to be a lighthearted episode, a comedy episode, if you will. And I just feel like this one does a really good job of mixing the lighthearted romantic comedy aspect with the hardcore sci-fi archaeology planet thing, whatever. So that's probably my number 3. Number 2, I think, is The Offspring. And I have an interesting history with this episode because I feel like at first, when I remember first watching it when I was younger, I didn't like it. And I think the reason I didn't like it is because this episode does that weird thing that I hated when I was a kid, where shows of this era would introduce a new element, like a new character, and then they would either kill that character or they would do something with that character where the character would no longer be on the show, and they all just, I was doing I don't even know the name of this gesture, the
Shuffling
wash your hands of it.
Yeah, wash your hands of it. That's good.
Yeah. That kind of just like...
The old Pontius Pilate.
Yeah. And, we're going to go back to the way for the next episode.
Wow. That's multifaceted referencing there, Nick.
But I've grown to love it more in the rewatching of the episode, and it's actually a heartbreaking episode because it's just so. I mean, the actress that plays Lal does a really good job of embodying the childlike nature of the character, but also really does a good job of being an android and emulating Data's. And it's just a heartbreaking episode from a parent's aspect because you have to watch Data, he has feelings, but he's not, he's still learning to accept them. So here he is trying to grapple with the loss of his child. And I think this one does a better job of this storyline than the child does in season 2, which I still like that episode, but this episode does a better job of that storyline. So that's probably why it's my number 2 now, especially. And my number 1...
Can I ask you a question first before you say your number 1?
Yeah, sure.
I was going to ask you if you thought being a parent impacted the way you felt about that episode.
Oh, yeah, it totally does. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like I appreciate it more after I had kids.
Because you can feel what Data, in a strange way, what Data is feeling about the drive to reproduce and to connect with his essence by having a child, and the meaning behind it and teaching her new things. And you can kind of see the pride in a weird way of him be glad to see Lal advance so quickly, but also you feel that weird at the end when he's kind of like, well, she's no longer, but he feels the absence like he feels with Yar, and it really breaks your heart, man. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen that character more. And I guess my number 1, it's kind of obvious, but it's just like one of the best episodes of the entire series, and it's Yesterday's Enterprise. I mean, it's the episode that lands it in the canon of Star Trek, because up until this point, I don't know if you really felt like this show was a part of the history of Star Trek as a historical ongoing saga spanning centuries until this moment. I mean, you kind of get it with the very first episode in Dr. McCoy's cameo, but that's so short, you don't really feel like there's a legacy here. But now you feel the legacy because of Enterprise C, and it does such a wonderful job of making those characters so well-rounded, and so even though they're one-off characters, you understand their motivation about not wanting to go back, but feeling the duty of having to go back. And I don't know, it's just great. And I have some honorable mentions. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the phenomenon of like someone asking you, what is the best 3-episode run of a series? Well, the 3-episode run of Yesterday's Enterprise, The Offspring, and Sins of the Father, all right together, like you would have watched it literally 3 weeks in a row. That is quite, well, actually it wasn't 3 weeks in a row, because apparently there was a hiatus between Yesterday's Enterprise and The Offspring, but whatever. Anyway, it's a great run of 3 episodes on the series. And then, I don't know, I like Hollow Pursuits because I like Barclay. I like Sarek because it's that character is a wonderful character, and to see him come back in the Next Generation and grapple with, the end of his life is so great. And I didn't even mention Best of Both Worlds, which is crazy and insane, but yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy and insane.
You said your number 1 was obvious. I didn't know there were 2 I didn't know what you were going to pick.
Yeah, I don't know that it is obvious, because mine's not going to be, there's one in common so far. But I think that's a good point. I had mentioned when we talked about this show previously, I talked about how I got into Star Trek because I watched it with my dad, and he watched the Star Trek The Next Generation, but I never really sat down and really started watching it for myself until this season, and it was right around yesterday's Enterprise. I don't necessarily think it was that episode, but I was hooked from then on out. I was like, this is so good, because all of the episodes from then on out were so good, and a lot of the ones that you mentioned at least fall in that half. But I'm going last, so thank you, Michael.
I'll go next.
Okay.
I have 5 because I love them all almost equally.
They're like your children.
Can I guess?
Yesterday's Enterprise, for all the reasons everyone just listed. When I like Star Trek, I like the world, I like the timeline and the mythology. So between filling in the Enterprise C and what we see in Generations, we get the entire line of Enterprises, and I feel like it's very important. Then Serac, pretty much for the same reasons. It connects to the original series. Mark Leonard is such a huge part of why Star Trek works for me. If you read the books, the mind meld between Picard and Serac, they make into a much bigger thing, because you find out that Spock and Serac never mind melded, and it's an ongoing thing with Picard too.
That comes out later too in Unification.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a big Picard moment. It's one of those pillars of who Picard is. Then Sins of the Father. Like I said earlier, I go nuts for all the Klingon stuff, and especially Worf, and the introduction of Kurn and the House of Moog, and like learning everything about that character. He's just stopped being kind of the token Klingon, and he has his own story, his own world. That's why he can work in other Star Trek series. Then Deja Q. I love Q as a villain. He's just, and usually I hate omnipotent villains. Like I didn't like them in the original series where random omnipotent, but with Q it works. It works so well, and you really believe this. He's so powerful, but he annoys his own people so much, almost as much as he annoys Picard. It makes the character that much more colorful and fun. And then Best of Both Worlds, obviously. First Contact is my favorite of the Next Gen movies, and this is essentially the first part of that. I mean, First Contact begins with his nightmares of the end of this movie, or the end of this episode. You have to watch it. Like, literally, anytime I want to watch First Contact, I watch both parts of the Best of Both Worlds, and then I immediately watch the movie afterwards. Was that all 5, or did I forget one?
I think that
Did
was
you say
5.
Yesterday's?
Yeah, Yesterday's Enterprise, Deja Q, Serac,
Sins of the Father, and Best of
Father.
Both
Yeah,
Worlds.
that's all.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even mention Deja Q, and it's also insane that Q, being one of my favorite characters, is not anywhere in my top 3 or 5 or whatever for this season.
Really, it just speaks to the strength of the ones before.
Mm-hmm.
Deja Q was my number 4, and Serac was my number 5.
I guess that's me, kids. You ready?
Yes, adult.
Always.
I gave honorable mentions to, you've said all of them, Hollow Pursuits, Deja Q, Captain's Holiday, and The Best of Both Worlds. In no particular order. You all look shocked, but I'm going to just tell you, The Best of Both Worlds is problematic for me in a lot of ways. And I will tell you my reason, and you can disagree, but you're not going to change my mind. To me, what's a little weird is that they will move heaven and earth to get Picard back, and they're able to make him human again, but they can't do that for everybody, and so I think it's a little bit weird.
I mean, First Contact explains that. He was meant to be like the Borg Queen. He wasn't fully assimilated. If you're fully assimilated, your mind is essentially wiped, and you're almost gone. But Picard, his psyche was still there because they needed his knowledge, and they
liked the fact that he had some humanity so that he could connect to the humans when they assimilated him. He was like the baby step between true assimilation.
Yeah, the side stuff like the books and the comics, they really fill in that, which also makes First Contact more believable when Picard's gunning everyone down. Like, I get what you're saying, especially if you watch First Contact thinking that, like, he's kind of a hypocrite since he was saved, but he's killing his own ensigns. But
It's hard with Hugh and Seven, though, in the lore.
Yeah, it is hard. That's all hard for me. It just makes it not enjoyable for me to watch, and it's not particularly. I'm at a level of discomfort at about 11 out of 10 whenever we're doing anything Borg related. I just find them so upsetting. So it's hard for me to really enjoy that on some level. Some episodes I do like more than others. I like First Contact more than other things, but this one's on my honorable mention, but it doesn't crack my top 3. So those are the reasons. Also, I don't like that lady.
That lady.
Shelby was one of her complaints early on. So.
I don't need her in my life. She's a good person. Actually, I'm not sure of that. I don't know. Okay, my number 3 is nobody has put this yet, but is The Survivors. Did you say that one, Michael? I don't know.
You mentioned it.
That's my worst. But.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that when it comes back around, I get excited because I remembered it from my first viewing because I thought that it was a very well-crafted episode, and I find it to be very enjoyable. It's probably not going to make my top 10 for the series or anything, but one of these. My number 2 is The Offspring. Again, the first time we watched it, it didn't grab me the way it grabs me now. I really like that actress. I can't think of her name. I think it's Hallie something. She plays Lizzie McGuire's mom for all you millennials that are listening. Yeah, she's great, and I think she did a really nice job. She should have gotten an Emmy. I don't think she did, but
Hallie Todd is her name.
Hallie Todd. Hallie, if you're listening, tweet us at CPU Podcast.
Wow.
Wouldn't we love to hear about her acting? And
We
her
would.
experience?
I was just worried that you wouldn't get that in before the end of the episode.
I know my job. Come on.
It even spills onto other episodes that you're not part of. I'm like, where's Sarah? She's supposed to say this.
Twitter handle. Although I don't Twitter much myself, but
I know there's irony there, but we'll work on that. Continue.
I do have one. Anyway, my favorite is Yesterday's Enterprise. This is definitely going to make my top episodes of this series. I think that if you can watch this episode and not feel emotions, then you might need to, I don't know, I don't want to judge you. But
You might need to walk yourself back from the Borg, apparently.
yeah, you might need to talk to Counselor Troy. I think that some of the things that happen in this episode, Guinan, man, Whoopi really gave it to us for this episode. Whoopi really drove it home. I don't know. I think that it was fun to see Denise Crosby, and it's just a very, very smart episode.
Well, spoiler, it sets up some future episodes.
Oh, yes. Yes. I got what you're saying. Yes, for Denise Crosby. Which that was very clever writing, too, because I don't know if they anticipated that when they wrote this, but...
No, it was her idea.
Yeah, what a dilemma. You have to go back because you made a difference in this war, but you're all going to die. Sorry. Yeah, so interesting. And we wanted to know what happened to the Enterprise C, right? So...
Right.
Now we know.
And on the other side of it, we wanted a more meaningful death for Yar as an audience. That's a big complaint.
That's true.
Those are mine.
All right. Well, the good news is every single one on my list has been mentioned at least once. Now, I cap myself off at 3 as far as what I'm calling the best. So if we're not judging people, then I shall not be judged. In my honorable mentions, which include Deja Q, because Q is, his episodes have featured on all of my other best of lists, and I will say that in all of the cases of my honorable mentions, these are episodes that seed other episodes down the way, so whether they're good right now and better later, or they're great right now and they just keep going, that's why these all get honorable mentions. Deja Q being one of them. Q as having to deal with the human condition that he so loves to mock and play with like cat with mouse, and John Delancey being such an incredible actor. The whole episode is just delightful. Is it as good as the 3 that I ended up picking? Maybe in a different season it would be, but this is a great season. So Deja Q is an honorable mention. Captain's Holiday for me is an honorable mention for all the reasons that Michael said. First of all, I love that it adds a lot of depth to Jean-Luc Picard as a character, and you're going to find as we go forward that many of the episodes that really explore his depth of character start to feature in my lists a lot. And Vash comes back more than once. She isn't just a one-time vacation summer holiday floozy. She comes back multiple times.
Multiple series.
I mean, because she's very good. She's got great chemistry with him. She's got great chemistry with a lot of the people she plays against. And it's very exciting. This all starts on this episode.
I love that character. I love the actor. I love the chemistry. And when I think about this show, it feels like she has a bigger presence, but she's only in 2 episodes of Next Gen, and then she's only in 1 episode of Deep Space Nine.
But what a presence!
Yeah, she
memorable.
Really does. It's a weighted presence, I guess.
Yeah, and she works very well with Patrick Stewart, and it is more lighthearted, but it's not dumb. It ends up playing like a screwball comedy in many aspects, which is also very clever and very well performed. And so
it's got Ferengi in it.
It does have Ferengi. I don't mind them as much as some other people. But they are kind of the buffoons in the episode. And when he's reading the book in the veranda on Ryza, he's very relaxed with his shirt open. Just want to mention, he's a handsome guy. He's older, but he's handsome, okay? Sarek is one of my honorable mentions because I love... Sarek. Yeah, Sarek. They say Sarek on the show, so I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
I need a soundbite. You say his name.
What?
What's Spock's dad's name?
Serac.
Well,
as opposed to Serac, who founded the Logic.
I've always said Sarek. I don't know.
The episode with the man's name is in my honorable mentions. Pretty much, it's already been stated. Mark Leonard is wonderful. This seeds some plot points that come out later on in the series. It's a lovely send-off to the character itself, who plays such a big role in the entire history. It's deepening that connection between Next Gen and the original series, which again is developed a little bit later. And I just think by this time the acting is really good all across the spectrum, whether it's the main cast and the guest cast, it doesn't matter. So I really like that one. In my honorable mentions otherwise, I've included Yesterday's Enterprise. If I expanded to 4, Yesterday's Enterprise would be number 4 for me. And you've already all mentioned why. It's a very, very, very good episode, and I really, really, really like it. Do I like it as much as the 3 I'm about to say? It's like this much underneath. This much. But it's such a well done episode, so well written, vintage Star Trek. All of the characters are in it. You get a little bit of history. You get a very weird dystopian version where the Klingons, they actually won the war. I mean, a lot of that is really, really cool. So it's a very good episode. But my top 3 are Sins of the Father, because I think it is the best Klingon episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. I love the ending when the council turns his back on him because he has to renounce to save the honor of his house. It gives me chills every time. And plus, you've got Jean-Luc Picard being his, whatever the name of that role is, I can't remember. Chadish! Yes, that whole piece, which also comes back later on in Reverberations with the whole Gowron versus Duras business. I just think it's a really, really well done episode. Number 2 for me seems to be everybody's number 2, which is The Offspring. It's very, 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 very well written. Again, vintage Star Trek, well directed, well performed. And it just expands Data's. Data already has such a rich character, but to take it to this level where we're exploring whether artificial intelligence can reproduce, and then in this case, he wants to reproduce in a vision of him, which is already a vision of us. It's got a lot of multi-layered academic philosophical pieces to consider when you're thinking about it, but even just the final moments when everything is kind of winding down and the decision is made that she cannot continue, it's heartbreaking. And I'm not a parent, but I completely empathize with that entire sequence. I think you wouldn't have a heart if you didn't. Now, I have no qualms about splitting this out, this cliffhanger. The Best of Both Worlds, parts 1 and 2, I'm just going to preview, are my top 2 episodes of the Star Trek The Next Generation. They are, to me, some of the finest episodes because the story was very well mapped out. And yeah, Shelby's annoying. We all can agree on that. But this whole Locutus thing plays into Picard's character for the rest of the series, for First Contact, for Star Trek Picard, and probably any time he's ever mentioned ancillary-wise, I don't know. I remember sitting down and watching these episodes for the very first time. This episode in particular, when I was what I would have been 13, left a pit in my stomach, my mouth was open, and I was like, what? I have to wait for the end of this story? What happens? He's a Borg now? It was shocking. Shocking, I tell you. And it was amazingly well done. And everything from beginning to end in that episode, and in the second part, which guess where that's going to be in my season 4 top 3, is just so well done that I have to put it at the top. I love them, these 2 episodes, so much. Yep.
It consistently ranks as usually the best episode of The Next Generation, up there with a couple other well-known ones. But yeah, so...
I don't like things other people like.
I mean,
okay.
like, The Best of Both Worlds, parts 1 and 2, I mean, it was theatrically released, like, twice. And it's still, even, like, I think 4 or 5 years ago, last time they did it, it still made a good amount of money. Like, people love those episodes.
Crazy.
I'm losing my words. I just think it's so wonderfully put together, and it was to thrust the main character into such a predicament, the captain of the ship into such a predicament, and you didn't know where it was going to go. Even back then, I didn't know anything was going on with Patrick Stewart's contract negotiations, but there was a very real possibility while you were watching the episode that he wasn't going to come back, or that we were going to be exploring a world where Picard is Locutus of Borg and everybody has to fight the Borg for the next season. So there was a lot of unknown to it, and it was very, very intense. It's still intense. It plays very well, 30 years after it came out. So I really love them.
And we talk about how popular it is as a 2-part episode and how it has affected so many different things involving Picard, but it also plays a pretty big hand in the first episode of Deep Space Nine. Like, we go back to, like, we see Locutus there. It affects that main character of that show.
Yeah, the Battle of Wolf 359 is such a reoccurring thing. Like, as far as this world is concerned, it's huge. It's like Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
It gives me chills just talking about it. I kind of want to go back and watch it again.
If I'm being honest, I did not watch this episode, The Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 or 2, when the show was originally out. I don't know what I was doing in June of 1990, but I missed this episode in the original run, and I didn't actually watch it for the first time until like several years after the show had ended. So I think the only reason I don't rank it higher is because I don't have that nostalgic... I don't have the memory of the impact of the episode. I only knew of the impact based secondhand on what everyone says about it and how it was like this big shocker. And so, in a weird way, it kind of... I don't want to say it's lost on me, because it's not lost on me, because when I actually watch the episode, it's an amazing episode. It's just like, I don't have that... I have the weird connection to the other episodes that I listed in my top, and that one's just like, yeah, it's a great episode. And it kind of just ends there in a weird way.
I know what you're saying, Michael, because it doesn't land home with me at all, because I knew what the outcome was. So it's not as shocking to me, I guess, maybe, is the problem. But I don't know. It doesn't... I'm not saying it's not good. I put it on my honorable mention, but I don't get the chills that Kylie gets because I didn't watch it in real time, and I already knew the outcome of the whole thing. So I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna go get him somehow or whatever.
Yeah, in my house, this is the stuff of legend. I think it was Saturday at 7 o'clock is when Star Trek The Next Generation aired in syndication in this market. And it was...
Yep, Channel 3.
Yep, 2 TV household of 6 people to kind of fight over it. And I was like, no, this is my appointment. Nobody bother me. Now, of course, there's a certain brother who I will not name on this podcast who still bothered me because that's just the kind of relationship we had. But he would watch it too. So it was Star Trek The Next Generation Saturday evening. Sit down and watch it. And the best of both worlds I watched when it was brand new. And at the time, it was a big deal.
I guess I'm saying from my perspective, that's actually, I wish I had that experience that you had, Kylie, because I know it's a good episode. I know that it's consistently ranked as one of the best episodes of the series in all of Star Trek. But for whatever reason, it just sucks that I have that weird emptiness, not emptiness, that's a terrible word. I just don't have the connection there with it from the fact that I don't remember the big deal that it was at the time. And it's just like, man, I wish I had that. I guess what I'm saying.
I'm nostalgic to that time in TV history where that season finale cliffhanger was this huge thing, like, for the world. I mean, I wasn't watching this live because I was not yet 5, but it reminds me of, like, The Simpsons.
Things in, Nick.
No one likes you, Nick.
Just stop talking, then. You just podcast.
You can keep talking. We'll just judge you in silence. Keep talking.
No, we just don't get those cliffhangers like that. Even when an episode or show has a big cliffhanger, it's basically expected that it's going to be wrapped up. We're going to figure it out and we're going to enjoy it no matter how good or bad it is. Everyone was waiting together.
Yeah, there was no internet back then. At least not one that people could use in a general way. You literally were waiting. It was a big deal when I found out that the season premiere was coming. And it was like, nope, nobody talk to me. I have to find out what happens. All right.
I don't remember being like that with, like, I guess maybe ER. But other than that, I don't remember being that way with a lot of shows.
Oh, I do.
I was just an oblivious kid, I guess. I don't know.
I was that way with the X-Files. I was that way with Friends. I was that way with
Dawson's Creek for me, maybe, but I was I was older, you know.
Yeah. Other than what we have already talked about, episode-wise, generally speaking, or in case you're feeling really passionate, is there anything else you want to say about Season 3 of Star Trek The Next Generation?
Season 3 is where we get Michael Piller as a big part of the Star Trek universe. He started writing episodes then, and he was a big part of creating Deep Space Nine, helping write for Deep Space Nine, but creating Voyager. But I think he leaves after 1 season of Voyager? I can't remember, but he kind of comes in a big way and starts to eventually kind of working with Rick Berman, filling that Gene Roddenberry void a little bit. So I feel like that's worth at least mentioning. We don't have to discuss it. Any baseball references from now on are because of him.
Well, Ronald D. Moore, I don't know where he comes in. Is it last season or this season where Ronald D. Moore comes in? Who most people might know him as the creator, executive producer of the reboot of the Battlestar Galactica and other series.
And also Star Trek Picard. His first episode was The Bonding.
Okay, well, there you go.
And also Outlander. I just found that out.
So this is the season where Ronald D. Moore becomes more important to the series, and I think it seems like Michael Piller and Ronald D. Moore are the masterminds of breaking away from the, now that we know in hindsight, tyranny of Gene Roddenberry.
Tyranny is a strong word.
Yeah, I know it is. That is a strong word.
Gene Roddenberry wanted almost no conflict with a lot of the main characters to truly show the utopia. Something that is hard to create television in that way without conflict. I think fighting for that is worth doing, and you just have to get creative. I think what a lot of Trek fans who have issues with Discovery and Picard might be because we're farther away from that than ever. We'll talk about that more, but I think Michael Piller comes in and Ronald D. Moore and can walk that line better.
Also, like, if you're reading the biographies, at this point, Gene Roddenberry was kind of losing his mind, and a lot of his ideas were batshit crazy. I really recommend reading the movie Memories by William Shatner, and he shares some of the ideas that Roddenberry was trying to push forward for the series and for the movies, and, like, they were so terrible, it's for the best to move on creatively.
Anything else you want to say about season 3 or the Next Generation up until this point?
Did we miss, is Booby Trap the episode with Leah Brahms?
Yes, it is. And that's
one.
one of my honorable mentions because I like that character. And I especially like the contrast between the way Geordi fantasizes about her ideal, the way he idolizes her in this episode, and then the way she actually ends up being later on in the series. Yeah, I like...
Which is the same season, and I'm trying to...
Yeah, it's episode 6.
That's one of the... To me, that's probably the best episode of the first half of the season, is that episode.
Leah Brahms has that same, like, Vash quality where she's only in 2 episodes, but, like, she helped design the Enterprise, so she's, like, an important character in the show. But I thought that was worth mentioning. I can stop talking now.
Oh, I was just going to say, Leah Brahms, those pair of episodes... They're all right for me, but as I've moved on in my adult life, I respond to the bookending episode a little less positively because I'm totally where her mind is when Geordi is spouting off all the things that he thought he knew about her based upon a holographic representation. It does play off a little creepy, and it makes me feel sorry for Geordi LaForge in the moment.
That's why I don't like that episode.
Yeah.
It feels kind of pathetic.
Yes, exactly. And I want...
Cringy. It's cringy.
It's like, I know people probably would do weird crap like that with the holodeck. At the same time, I'd like to think people in this world have moved beyond. I don't know. It doesn't do anything for Geordi LaForge as a professional to me.
My only defense is that he doesn't intentionally create her on the holodeck like that. Like the computer kind of more of a way...
The computer's
trying to create a Clippy.
It's not the creation process. It's the second half of the process where he operates on those assumptions. No, the first episode isn't bad. I mean, in the situation that he needs to consult with creator of computer of Enterprise, it makes perfect sense and it plays well. The bookending episode is the one which I think might actually be in season 4. Is the one that I'm talking about, where it does play him off as a little bit pathetic, and he's the Mr. Lonely Hearts, apparently, and Geordi is a catch. People should see that, man. Stop trying to, like, put him in the weird situations, and that I'm responding to her reaction, like, you don't know anything about me. Of course he doesn't know anything about him, but he's still operating as if he does, based upon who he's had to talk to up until the point. That's all. That's all I feel about that. Anything else?
No, I said I was done.
All right. Is everybody else done too?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Looking forward to season 4.
All right. Well, since we're done and looking forward to season 4, what I like to do is thank once again Nick, Sarah, Kyle, and Michael for joining me to talk about the 3rd season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And because we've completed our 3rd season talk, it's time to roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros. And if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe on our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, all the Trek series of the past, with the exception of Discovery and Picard and the animated series and Lower Decks, because all of that's come out since I last wrote this credit tag, are available on just about every streamer you can think of. We're not going to give preference unless one of them chooses to, connect with us. We could do a mutual collaboration, In the meantime, our Star Trek 50 Plus series panel will next reconvene to discuss the 4th season of The Next Generation and Part 8 of this Looking Back series shortly. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!
Bye.